The dust settled slowly in the ruined building. Hannah pressed her back against the cold metal wall, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. The wound in her side burned like fire. Purple blood, her blood, stained the floor beneath her. 3 days ago, she had been with her unit. 3 days ago, she had friends beside her. Now they were gone. Dead or scattered, she did not know which. The human attack had been sudden and brutal. Everything her commanders told her about humans was true, she thought. They were monsters who showed no mercy. Hannah looked down at her rifle. The weapon was broken, snapped in half when she fell from the second floor during the explosion. She had nothing to defend herself with except her claws, and even those felt weak now. The pain in her side made it hard to think clearly. She heard footsteps outside. Heavy boots on broken concrete. Human boots. Hannah's 3 hearts began to beat faster. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. The wound had taken too much blood from her body. The footsteps came closer. Then they stopped. Hannah held her breath. Maybe the human would not find her. Maybe they would walk past. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer in her own language, thinking of her family back on the homeworld. Her mother, her siblings. Would they ever know what happened to her? The door creaked open. Light flooded into the dark room. Hannah opened her eyes and saw the silhouette of a human soldier standing in the doorway. He was tall, dressed in combat armor that was covered in dirt and blood. He carried a rifle in his hands. This was it. This was how she would die. Alone, far from home, killed by the enemies she had been taught to hate and fear. Hannah had seen the propaganda videos. She knew what humans did to prisoners. They took no mercy on the Veltar people. They collected trophies from the dead. The human stepped into the room. His boots crunched on the broken glass that covered the floor. Hannah could see his face now through his helmet visor. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. A scar on his cheek. But his eyes were alert, scanning the room carefully. Then he saw her. Their eyes met across the dusty space. For a moment, neither of them moved. Hannah felt her body go cold. This was the moment. She had been trained for this. A soldier should face death with dignity. She closed her eyes. She did not want to see the weapon aimed at her. She did not want to watch her own death coming. Her claws dug into the floor beneath her. She waited for the sound of the gunshot. She waited for the pain. She waited for everything to end. But nothing happened. Seconds passed. Then more seconds. The shot never came. Confused, Hannah opened one eye slightly. The human was still standing there, but his rifle was lowered. He was not aiming at her. Instead, he was staring at the wound in her side. The human said something in his language. Hannah did not understand the words. Her people had learned some human speech for military purposes, but his accent was strange. He repeated the words, slower this time. Still, she could not understand. Then the human did something that shocked her completely. He set his rifle down against the wall. He held up both hands, showing they were empty. Slowly, carefully, he reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a white box with a red symbol on it. A medical kit. Hannah's mind could not process what she was seeing. Humans did not help Veltar. Humans killed Veltar. That was what the war was about. That was what her commanders had told her every single day since the fighting began 3 years ago. The human took a step toward her. Hannah tried to push herself away, but the pain in her side flared up and she gasped. The human stopped immediately. He spoke again, his voice soft. He pointed at her wound, then at his medical kit. He made a gesture like wrapping bandages. Was he trying to help her? That made no sense. Nothing about this made any sense. Hannah's training screamed at her that this was a trick. The human would get close and then kill her. Or maybe he wanted to take her prisoner for interrogation. She had heard stories about human interrogation methods, but the human's eyes did not look cruel. They looked concerned. He took another small step forward, moving slowly like someone approaching a frightened animal. He opened the medical kit and held it so she could see inside. Bandages, medicine, tools for treating wounds. Hana realized she had a choice. She could refuse his help and likely die from blood loss in the next hour. Or she could trust this human soldier who, for reasons she could not understand, seemed to want to save her life. The human spoke again. This time, Hana caught a few words she recognized. The words were badly pronounced, clearly not his native language, but she understood them. He was speaking Veltar, or trying to. "You hurt," he said in her language. "Let me help." Hana stared at him in complete disbelief. A human speaking Veltar. A human offering to help instead of kill. Everything she had been taught, everything she believed about the enemy, was being challenged in this one moment. The human slowly knelt down, still keeping his distance. He pulled out bandages and medicine from the kit. He pointed at her wound again, then at the supplies. He was asking permission. Actually asking permission to treat her. Hana's logical mind told her this was impossible. But her survival instinct was stronger. She was dying. This human, enemy or not, was offering her a chance to live. Slowly, painfully, she nodded her head. The human's face showed relief. He moved closer, his movements careful and deliberate. As he began to examine her wound, Hana noticed something pinned to his armor. A patch with a symbol she recognized from her intelligence briefings. A medical cross. This human was not a regular soldier. He was a medic. Maybe that explained it. Maybe human medics followed different rules than human warriors. Or maybe Hana thought as the medic began to clean her wound with surprising gentleness. Maybe everything she had been told about humans was a lie. Her name was Hana. She was a soldier of the Veltar Imperial Guard. And at this moment, her enemy was saving her life. The realization made her head spin almost as much as the blood loss did. The human medic worked on her wound with steady hands. Hana watched him carefully, still not fully trusting what was happening. Every instinct told her to fight, to escape, but the pain and weakness kept her still. Besides, if this human wanted to kill her, he could have done it already. He cleaned the wound first, using something that stung but stopped the bleeding. Hana hissed in pain, her claws extending automatically. The human paused, looking at her with concern in his eyes. He spoke softly in his own language, a soothing tone that needed no translation. Then he continued working, even more gently than before. Hana studied his face while he worked. He looked young, maybe close to her own age in human years. His hands were scarred, probably from months or years of combat medicine. There was a name tag on his armor that she could barely read. Jiwan. That was his name. When Jiwan finished bandaging her wound, he sat back and looked at her. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Jiwan." Then he pointed at her and raised his eyebrows, asking a question. "Hana," she said quietly. It felt strange to give her name to a human. A week ago, she would have died before telling the enemy anything about herself. Jiwan smiled slightly and nodded. He reached into another pouch and pulled out a ration pack. He opened it and handed half to her. Hana stared at the food. Human food. She had no idea if it was safe for Veltar to eat. Jiwan seemed to understand her hesitation. He pulled out a small device and scanned the food, then showed her the screen. Hana recognized it as a bioscanner. The screen showed green, indicating the food was safe for her species. How did a human soldier have information about Veltar biology programmed into his equipment? Hungry and weak, Hana took the food. It tasted strange, but not bad. As she ate, Ji-won pulled out a small photo from a pocket in his armor. He showed it to her. The picture showed him with other humans, older ones. His family, Hana guessed. A woman who looked like him, probably his mother. A man with kind eyes, his father maybe. Younger humans too. Siblings. Ji-won pointed at each person in the photo and said their names, though Hana could not remember them all. Then he looked sad. He made a gesture toward the sky, then pressed his hand over his heart. He missed them. He wanted to go home. Hana understood that feeling completely. She thought of her own family on the homeworld. Her mother who worked in the gene labs. Her siblings who were still too young to fight. She had not seen them in over a year. Without thinking, she reached out and touched the photo gently with one claw. Ji-won looked surprised, then smiled. He carefully put the photo back in his pocket, over his heart. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sounds of distant fighting continued. Explosions rumbled like thunder. Gunfire crackled. Both their armies were still out there, still killing each other. But in this small ruined building, two enemies shared food and silence. Ji-won started looking around the room more carefully. Hana watched as he examined the broken equipment. This place had been some kind of medical facility before the war destroyed it. Cabinets still held supplies. Computer screens hung dark and cracked on the walls. Ji-won walked to one of the computers and tried to turn it on. Surprisingly, it flickered to life, running on backup power. The screen showed files and records. Hana pulled herself up slowly, using the wall for support. The bandages Ji-won had applied held well. The pain in her side had dulled to a throb. She moved closer to see what Ji-won was looking at. The files were in both human and Veltar languages. Medical records. Treatment logs. Hana felt her breath catch in her throat as she read. This facility had been treating both humans and Veltar. Before the war escalated, before her people and his people started killing each other, doctors from both species had worked here together. They had been studying each other's biology, not to create weapons, but to develop better medicine. There were photos in the files. Human doctors working alongside Veltar healers. Patients of both species being treated side by side. Children, human and Veltar, playing together in what looked like a recovery ward. Ji-won scrolled through more files. He found his own name in the records. He had trained here, Hana realized. This building was where he learned to be a medic. That was why he had Veltar biology data in his scanner. That was why he could speak a few words of her language. Hana pointed at the screen, at a file about Veltar healing techniques. She recognized some of the methods. Her people's traditional medicine, documented and explained in human language. Ji-won had learned from her people. That was why he knew how to treat her wound correctly. Ji-won turned to look at her. He pointed at the photos of humans and Veltar working together. Then he pointed at themselves. He made a gesture with his hands, bringing them together. Unity, cooperation, peace. But then he pointed outside, where the sounds of battle continued. He shook his head sadly. War. Destruction. Death. Hana understood what he was trying to say. It had not always been like this. Their peoples had once worked together. They had been learning from each other, helping each other. Something had changed. Something had turned cooperation into conflict. She wanted to ask him what happened. How did they go from working together to trying to kill each other? But the language barrier was too strong. She only knew a few words of human speech, and Ji-won only knew a few words of Veltar. Ji-won found another file on the computer. This one showed a news report from 3 years ago. The beginning of the war. A Veltar ship had been destroyed near human space. The Veltar government blamed humans. A human colony had been attacked. The human government blamed Veltar. Both sides claimed the other started it. Both sides showed evidence. Both sides called for justice, for revenge. And then the shooting started. But as Hana read through the file more carefully, something felt wrong. The evidence seemed too perfect, too convenient. The timeline was too neat. Both incidents happened within hours of each other, as if coordinated. G1 was reading the same file. His face showed confusion, then suspicion. He looked at Hana, and their eyes met. She could see that he was thinking the same thing she was. What if neither of their peoples had started this war? What if someone had wanted them to fight? But who would benefit from human and Veltar destroying each other? Before they could explore that thought further, an explosion rocked the building. Closer than the others. Much closer. Dust fell from the ceiling. The computer screen flickered and died. Ji-won grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Hana followed, moving carefully because of her injury. Through the broken glass they could see movement. Soldiers, both human and Veltar, advancing from different directions. The battle was coming to them. G1 turned to Hana. He could leave her and escape. She could attack him while his back was turned. They were enemies again, whether they wanted to be or not. But Ji-won did not run. Instead, he held out his hand to her. Not to shake, not the human gesture. Just offering support, offering help. His face asked a simple question. Together? Hana looked at his hand. 3 fingers and a thumb, so different from her own 4 clawed digits. An enemy's hand. Or maybe, she thought, a friend's hand. She reached out and took it. Together. They moved away from the window and deeper into the building. The explosions were getting closer. Hana could hear radio chatter in both languages now. Her people were looking for survivors. Ji-won's people were doing the same. Neither of them wanted to be found by either side. Ji-won led them to a basement area. It was darker down here, but safer. Thick walls surrounded them. Old medical equipment sat covered in dust and debris. They found the corner where they could rest and hide. Hana sat down carefully, her wound aching. Ji-won checked his supplies. He had 1 full magazine of ammunition left. Some medical supplies. A little water. Not much. If they had to fight their way out, they would not last long. But Hana did not think Ji-won wanted to fight. He kept looking at her, then at his radio. He was thinking about something, planning something. After a few minutes of silence, Ji-won pulled out his radio and a small tablet device. He showed Hana the screen. It displayed both human and Veltar military communication frequencies. He pointed at the Veltar channels, then pointed at her. Then he pointed at the human channels and at himself. Hana understood what he was suggesting, but she could not believe it. He wanted to contact both sides? That was insane. If they revealed their position, soldiers from both armies would come. They would be killed or captured. But Ji-won shook his head. He pulled up the files they had seen earlier on his tablet. He had copied them before the computer died. The evidence about the beginning of the war. The suspicious timing. The too perfect evidence that blamed both sides. He pointed at these files, then at the radio. He wanted to send this information to both armies. He wanted to show them what he and Hana had discovered. Maybe if both sides saw the truth, they would stop fighting. Hana felt their hearts racing. It was a crazy idea. It would probably get them both killed. But what was the alternative? Keep hiding until they were found? Try to kill each other to prove loyalty to their own sides? Go back to being enemies after everything that happened between them today? She thought about the photos she had seen. Humans and Veltar working together. Learning together. Living in peace. That was possible once. Maybe it could be possible again. Hana nodded slowly. Ji-won smiled, but it was a sad, nervous smile. They both knew what they were risking. But first, they needed to understand more. Ji-won found paper and a pen in the old medical supplies. He started drawing. Simple pictures at first. A Veltar ship. An explosion. Then a human colony. Another explosion. Question marks everywhere. Hannah took the pen and added to his drawings. She sketched what her commanders had told her. That humans attacked first. That humans wanted to destroy the Veltar. That this war was necessary for survival. G1 drew what his commanders had said. That Veltar attacked first. That Veltar wanted human territory. That the war was justified and right. They looked at both versions of the story. They did not match. More than that, they seemed designed not to match. Designed to make each side hate the other. Hannah thought about her training. The videos they showed of human cruelty. The stories of human violence. But G1 had been gentle with her. He had saved her life. He had shared his food. He had shown her his family. Nothing about him matched what she had been taught. G1 must have been thinking similar thoughts. He pointed at Hannah, then made a gesture like claws slashing. That was what he had been taught. That Veltar were savage and brutal. But Hannah had not attacked him. She had accepted his help. She had tried to communicate. Someone had lied to both of them. Someone wanted them to see each other as monsters. The question was why. G1 pulled up more files on his tablet. Financial records that had been stored in the medical facilities database. Hannah could not read all the human numbers and terms, but G1's face told her he understood. His expression grew dark with anger. He showed her the files. Companies that made weapons. Corporations that supplied both armies. They were making enormous profits from the war. The longer the fighting continued, the richer these companies became. Hannah felt sick. Her friends had died so that someone could make money. Her people and G1's people were killing each other to make rich corporations even richer. She grabbed the pen and wrote in her own language. G1 could not read it, but she needed to express her rage somehow. She wrote curses she had learned from soldiers. She wrote questions she wanted to ask the leaders who sent them to die. G1 put his hand on her shoulder. A gesture of understanding, of shared anger. They had both been used. Their peoples had been manipulated into hating each other. The building shook from another explosion. Closer still, they did not have much time left. Soon, soldiers from one side or the other would find them. Or both sides would arrive at once and the fighting would happen right here. G1 picked up his radio and held it out to Hannah. He was giving her the choice. They could do this together or not at all. If she said no, he would not force it. He would find another way to keep her safe. Hannah looked at the radio, then at the files on the tablet, then at G1 himself. This human who had every reason to kill her, but chose kindness instead. This enemy who became something else, something she did not have a word for yet. She thought about her mother, who taught her that the purpose of strength was to protect, not to destroy. She thought about her siblings, who deserved to grow up in a universe without war. She thought about all the soldiers, human and Veltar, who were dying right now because powerful people wanted to profit from their deaths. Hannah reached out and took the radio. G1 exhaled with relief. They spent the next hour preparing their message. G1 recorded his part in human language. He explained what they found. He showed the financial records. He talked about meeting Hannah and realizing that everything they were told about the Veltar was propaganda. Then Hannah recorded her part in Veltar language. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger. She talked about the evidence they discovered. She described how G1 saved her life when he could have killed her. She challenged her commanders to explain why they lied about humans. They attached all the files they had copied. The medical records showing cooperation. The suspicious war evidence. The financial data proving who benefited from the conflict. Everything. G1 looked at the transmission, ready to send. His finger hovered over the button. Once they did this, There was no taking it back. They would be marked as traitors by both sides, hunted, probably killed. He looked at Hana one more time, giving her a final chance to back out. Hana placed her claw over his finger. Together, they pressed the button. The transmission went out to both military frequencies simultaneously. Human and Veltar commanders would receive it within seconds. Every soldier with a radio would hear it. There was no hiding it, no stopping it. G1 and Hana sat in the darkness, waiting. They did not know what would happen next. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Above them, they heard shouting, running footsteps, the sound of weapons being readied. Both armies had heard the transmission, and now they were coming. The response came faster than they expected. G1's radio crackled to life first. A human voice, sharp and angry, demanding to know his location, calling him a traitor, ordering him to surrender the Veltar prisoner immediately. Then Hana's communication device, which G1 had managed to repair partially, received a transmission in her language. Her commander's voice, cold, furious, accusing her of betraying her people, threatening execution for treason. Both of them were now enemies to their own sides, but other transmissions started coming through too. Younger voices, confused soldiers asking if what G1 and Hana said was true, requesting verification of the files. Some voices sounded angry at being lied to. Others sounded lost, not knowing what to believe anymore. G1 listened to the chatter on the human channels. He recognized some of the voices. People he had trained with. Friends from his unit. They were arguing amongst themselves. Some calling him a traitor. Others defending him, saying Jaim would not lie about something this serious. Hana heard similar arguments on the Veltar frequencies. Her clutchmates questioning the commanders, demanding to see the evidence for themselves. The commanders trying to shut down the discussion, but the soldiers kept asking questions. Then the building shook violently. Not from an explosion this time. From something landing on the roof. Something heavy. Hana recognized the sound. A Veltar drop pod. Her people were here. G1 heard the grinding of heavy machinery outside. Human armored vehicles. His people had arrived too. They were surrounded. Trapped between both armies. Hana looked at G1. His face was calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes. Her own fear must have been obvious too. Her hands were shaking. G1 stood up slowly and helped Hana to her feet. Her wound had stopped bleeding, but she was still weak. He checked his rifle one last time, then looked at her and shook his head. He set the weapon down against the wall. Hana understood. They were not going to fight. Fighting now would destroy everything they had tried to do. It would prove to both sides that the other was dangerous. It would restart the cycle of violence. They heard footsteps above them. Heavy boots, many of them. Commands being shouted in both languages. The soldiers were searching the building room by room. G1 moved to the stairs leading up from the basement. He called out in his language, announcing his presence. Announcing that he was unarmed. Hana did the same in Veltar, though the words were hard to say. Admitting weakness went against all her training. The footsteps stopped. There was silence. Then more shouting. Hana could hear her commanders ordering the soldiers to enter the basement and secure the prisoners. But she also heard hesitation in the soldiers' voices. They had heard the transmission. They knew what this meant. A human soldier appeared at the top of the stairs. Young, barely old enough to fight. His rifle was raised, aimed down at G1. Behind him, more human soldiers took positions. Hana counted at least 6. Then from another entrance, Veltar warriors emerged. Elite fighters in full combat armor. Their weapons were charged and ready. They aimed at both G1 and Hana. To them, she was as much a traitor as the human. The young human soldier descended the stairs carefully. He kept his weapon trained on G1, but his hands were shaking. He spoke, his voice uncertain. He asked G1 if the transmission was real, if the files were legitimate. G1 nodded. He spoke calmly, explaining everything they found. He gestured to the tablet with the evidence. The soldier glanced at it but did not lower his weapon. One of the Veltal warriors spoke to Hana. He was older, a veteran. He asked why she betrayed her people, why she worked with the enemy. Hana answered honestly. She said she had not betrayed anyone. She had told the truth. If the truth felt like betrayal, then something was wrong with what they were being asked to believe. The standoff continued. Neither side fired, but neither side backed down. Hana could feel the tension in the air. One wrong move and everyone would start shooting. She and G1 would die. Probably some of the soldiers too. Then something unexpected happened. The young human soldier lowered his rifle slightly. He told G1 that he knew him. They had trained together at this facility years ago, before the war. He knew G1 was a good medic, a good person. He did not want to believe G1 would lie. G1 seized the moment. He told the soldier to check the files himself, to verify everything. He had nothing to hide. The soldier hesitated, then stepped forward and picked up the tablet. He scrolled through the data while keeping one eye on G1 and Hana. As he read, his expression changed. Shock, then anger, then something that looked like grief. He turned to the other human soldiers and spoke rapidly. Hana could not follow all the words, but she understood the tone. He was telling them what he found. The evidence of manipulation, the proof of lies, the financial records showing who profited from their deaths. One of the Veltar warriors demanded to see the evidence too. Hana told him the access codes for the Veltar portion of the files. She transmitted them to his combat helmet's display. She watched his posture change as he read. His weapon lowered fractionally. Outside, more soldiers from both sides were gathering. The basement was surrounded. But something was changing. The radio chatter had shifted. Soldiers were sharing the files, passing them from unit to unit. The evidence was spreading faster than the commanders could contain it. A new voice came over G1's radio. A human commander, but not the angry one from before. This one sounded older, tired. He identified himself as someone important, though Hana did not understand the rank. He spoke directly to G1. He said that High Command had received the transmission. They were analyzing the evidence. He could not promise anything, but he ordered all units to hold fire until further investigation. He told G1 to stay where he was and remain calm. A similar message came through on the Veltar channels. A senior commander ordering all warriors to stand down, to maintain positions but do not engage. An investigation was being opened. The soldiers in the basement relaxed slightly. Weapons were not quite lowered, but fingers moved away from triggers. The immediate threat of death faded a little, but then new orders came through. Hardline commanders on both sides, ones who did not want the truth revealed, were issuing different instructions. Eliminate the traitors. Destroy the evidence. Silence them before more damage was done. The young human soldier looked confused. He was receiving conflicting orders. Attack or hold. His training said to follow commands, but his conscience said something different. The veteran Veltar warrior was in the same position. His orders were to execute Hana and G1, but he had read the files. He knew they were telling the truth. Hana watched both of them struggle with their choice. She understood their conflict completely. She had felt the same way an hour ago. Orders versus morality. Obedience versus truth. It was not an easy decision. The young human soldier made his choice first. He lowered his weapon completely and stepped aside. He told G1 he believed him. He would not shoot someone for telling the truth. The other human soldiers looked uncertain, but one by one, They also lowered their weapons. The Veltar warrior took longer to decide. Hana could see him weighing his options. His career, his honor, his life. Everything he had built could be destroyed by this choice. But finally, he powered down his weapon and stood down. He told Hana that truth was the highest honor. If their leaders had lied, then the leaders were the traitors, not her. The standoff was over, at least in this basement. But outside, the battle was still being decided. Would more soldiers make the same choice? Or would the hardliners win and restart the killing? Ji-won took Hana's hand. They waited together in the darkness, hoping their message had been enough. Hoping that truth was stronger than lies. Hoping that compassion could survive in a galaxy built on hate. The next few hours were chaos. News of the transmission spread across the entire war zone. Some units immediately ceased fire. Others continued fighting, either because they did not believe the evidence or because their commanders refused to acknowledge it. The front lines became confused, with soldiers from the same army sometimes facing off against each other. Hana and Ji-won remained in the basement, protected by the soldiers who had chosen to believe them. The young human soldier, whose name was Daeho, took command of the situation. He coordinated with the Veltar warrior, whose name was Timon, to establish a temporary ceasefire zone around the building. More soldiers arrived, but instead of attacking, they came to verify the evidence. Human and Veltar troops stood awkwardly near each other, neither side sure what to do. 3 years of war had taught them to shoot on sight. Now they were being asked to stand down and question everything. Ji-won's radio buzzed constantly. He received messages of support from medics across the human forces. They had always questioned the brutality they were ordered to accept. Now they had proof their doubts were justified. Some commanders tried to silence them, but the medics refused to be quiet. Hana heard similar reports from Veltar medical personnel. Healers who had struggled with the violence of war. They shared the evidence through their own networks, reaching soldiers across multiple battle zones, but not everyone was convinced. Hardline elements in both militaries saw the transmission as dangerous propaganda. They argued the files were fake, created by the enemy to weaken resolve. They called for Hana and Ji-won to be executed as traitors. On the second day, a strike team came for them. A mixed unit of human and Veltar hardliners who had secretly allied to eliminate the threat. They believed the war was necessary, that their species could not coexist. Hana and Ji-won represented a dangerous idea that needed to be destroyed. The team was led by 2 soldiers. A human special forces officer named Nari, decorated veteran with dozens of confirmed kills, and a Veltar battle leader named Kreese, elite warrior from the homeworld's finest military academy. They had spent years killing each other's species. Now they worked together for the first time, united by their determination to restart the war. Daeho's scouts spotted the team approaching. He warned Ji-won and Hana. They could run, try to escape. But where would they go? The fighting was everywhere, and running would just delay the inevitable. Ji-won made a different choice. He walked out of the basement into the open courtyard of the ruined medical facility. Hana followed him, despite her fear. If they were going to die, they would face it standing together. Nari and Kreese entered the courtyard with their weapons raised. Behind them, their team took positions. They were professional killers, and they would not miss. But Ji-won and Hana did not raise weapons. They stood side by side, unarmed. Ji-won spoke in his language. Hana spoke in hers. They said the same thing. They would not fight. Violence was the problem, not the solution. If Nari and Kreese wanted to kill them, they would have to shoot unarmed people in cold blood. Nari's finger tightened on her trigger. She had killed before. She could kill again. These 2 traitors threatened everything she believed in, everything she had fought for, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way they stood together, human and Veltar, showing no fear. Maybe it was the quiet dignity in their refusal to fight back. Or maybe it was the hundreds of soldiers watching from the surrounding buildings. Broadcasting this confrontation live to both militaries. Kreese raised his weapon, aimed directly at Hana. She had betrayed her species by working with the Ami. She deserved death by Veltar law. His training demanded he pull the trigger, but he hesitated too. He looked at Hana's face. She was not afraid. She believed in what she was doing. She believed it so strongly that she was willing to die for it. That was warrior's courage, the highest virtue in Veltar culture. How could he kill someone showing true honor? The courtyard was silent. Two trained killers aiming at two unarmed medics. Everyone watching, waiting to see what choice would be made. Nari lowered her weapon first. She could not do it. Could not shoot someone who refused to defend themselves. It felt wrong in a way that violated something deep inside her. She turned and walked away. Kreese held his aim a moment longer. Then he too powered down his weapon. He spoke to Hana in their language. He said she had shown greater courage than any warrior he had known. He would not dishonor her bravery with murder. The strike team dispersed without firing a shot. The hardliners had failed, not because they were defeated in combat, but because they could not overcome basic human decency. Even soldiers trained to kill could not kill someone whose only crime was telling the truth. After that, the momentum shifted rapidly. More units declared ceasefires. Soldiers from both sides started meeting under flags of truce to share the evidence. Angry troops confronted their commanders, demanding explanations for the lies. Within a week, formal peace negotiations began. The conspiracy unraveled as more information surfaced. The corporations that profited from the war were exposed. Politicians and military leaders who had engineered the conflict faced justice on both worlds. But the fighting did not stop immediately. Some units continued the war, either from loyalty to discredited commanders or from simple momentum. Peace, Hana learned, was harder than war. It required constant effort, constant choice. She and Ji-won spent the next months traveling between front lines, helping to establish truces. They became symbols of cooperation, proof that former enemies could work together. It was not easy. Many soldiers on both sides still hated and distrusted the other species. 3 years of propaganda could not be undone in a few weeks. 5 years passed. The war was officially over. Borders were redrawn. Reparations were paid. The guilty were punished. But more importantly, the process of rebuilding trust began. Hana had left the military and gone to medical school. Human medical school. She studied alongside former enemies, learning techniques she never knew existed. Her Veltar biology gave her unique insights that helped advance treatments for both species. Ji-won had done the same, studying Veltar healing methods. Together, they developed hybrid approaches that were better than either species had achieved alone. They opened a medical academy on the exact spot where they first met. Where the old ruined building once stood, a new facility rose. The academy trained both human and Veltar students together, teaching them medicine, teaching them cooperation, teaching them that the former enemy could become a trusted friend. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Hana stood in the academy's main hall. Students from dozens of worlds attended, not just humans and Veltar anymore. The peace between their two species had inspired others. Cooperation was spreading across the galaxy. A young Veltar student approached her after class. She asked Hana about the famous story. What did she feel in that moment when she closed her eyes, expecting to die? Was she really not afraid? Hana smiled. She looked across the hall to where Ji-won was teaching a class about trauma medicine. He caught her eye and smiled back. I was terrified, Hana admitted to the student. Everything I believed told me I was about to die. That humans were monsters who showed no mercy. What changed? The student asked. I opened my eyes, Hana said simply, and I saw the truth. Not a monster. Just another person who chose compassion over violence. Who chose to heal instead of harm. That is what humanity means. Not one species or another, but all of us choosing to be better than our worst instincts. She paused, looking around the hall at students of different species learning together, helping each other, becoming friends. Sometimes, Hana continued, all it takes is one person brave enough to lower their weapon first. One person willing to see past the propaganda to the truth. Jiwon showed me that humans were capable of extraordinary kindness. I hope I showed him that Veltar were worth that kindness. The student nodded thoughtfully and returned to her studies. Hana watched her go, then walked over to Jiwon's classroom. He finished his lecture and joined her. They walked together through the academy halls, past photos documenting the war and the peace that followed, past images of that first transmission, of the standoff in the basement, of Nari and Chris lowering their weapons, past pictures of the peace negotiations and the first joint human-Veltar medical mission. They reached the memorial wall, where names of the fallen were inscribed. Thousands of names, human and Veltar. Good people who died because of lies. Because powerful individuals valued profit over life. Jiwon placed his hand on the wall. Hana did the same. They stood in silence, remembering, honoring those who did not survive to see the peace they helped create. Do you ever wonder, Jiwon asked quietly, what would have happened if I had pulled the trigger that day? Every day, Hana admitted. The war might still be going. More names on this wall. More families destroyed. All because of one moment, one choice. Thank you, Jiwon said, for trusting me. For giving me a chance to prove that humans could be better. Thank you, Hana replied, for showing me that not all enemies have to remain enemies. That sometimes the person pointing a weapon at you could become the person you trust most in the galaxy. They stood together in silence, remembering the past, grateful for the present, hopeful for the future. Two former enemies who became the foundation of a lasting peace.